A very long time ago, before there were books or pencils, before people could write down their stories, there was a village hidden deep in the heart of the forest. That village was called Odinoni. The people of Odinoni were kind and wise. They grew yams, fetched water from the stream, and told stories by firelight. But there was one problem: no one could speak the full truth of their hearts. Not really. They tried, but words were too small. Some things, like the love of a mother, or the pain of losing a friend, or the wisdom of an ancestor, just couldn't fit inside everyday talking. And so the people sighed. They looked up at the stars. They prayed to the gods. How can we speak what lives in our bones? They asked. And do you know what happened? The gods heard them. The Orisha, powerful spirits who watched over the world, gathered in the sky. Obatala, the maker of humans, said, "These people have good hearts. Let us give them something special." Then Sango, the thunder god, stood tall and boomed, "Give them a voice that is not made of words, but of beats. Give them a drum that speaks like fire and sings like memory." The gods smiled. They agreed. And they whispered a secret into the wind. Far away, in a quiet corner of the forest, a baby boy was born. His name was Arodin. He didn't cry like other babies. Instead, he listened. He listened to the wind, to the trees, and to the earth under his feet. And one day, the trees whispered back. They told him how to carve the first talking drum. A drum that could say what people felt but couldn't explain. A drum that could remember the names of grandmothers and grandfathers long gone. A drum that could call rain, chase away fear, and remind the people of who they truly were. This is the story of that drum. It is a tale full of magic and truth, of brave children and wise elders, of forgotten songs and found voices. It will take you through the forest of ancient Yoruba lands, through thunder and sunshine, through joy and silence. But most of all, it will teach you this. Even when people forget who they are, even when they lose their way, a drum can bring them home again. So come close. Sit quietly. Listen with your heart. Because once upon a time, the drum began to speak. And the people remembered. The Drum Maker's Gift. Part 1: The Birth of Odinoni and the Silence Before Sound. Before Odinoni was Odinoni, before the roads were beaten into clay by bare feet and before market songs filled the dawn, there was silence. Not the silence of sleep, nor the hush of waiting. This silence was order. Heavy. A silence that wrapped itself around trees, sat thick on the river, and clung to the throats of those who wished to speak but had no words. The world was not without sound. The winds whispered, the birds cried, and fire cracked its laughter into the night, but humans, though they had tongues, could not yet share the fullness of what lived inside them. They spoke with gestures, with glances, with footsteps in sand. But it was never enough. The elders of the early tribe said it was not that people lacked a desire to speak, they simply had no way to say what the soul held. And so, the gods watched. The Orisha Obatala, he who molds the form of man, looked down from the high white clouds and wept, for though he had shaped their bodies with great care, he could see their spirits withering like unwatered young leaves. Orunmila, wise among the divine, saw this too, and went to the sacred grove where only gods may walk, to speak with the others. Let us give them a voice not of the tongue, he said, but of the ancestors. It was then that Sango, the god of thunder and lightning, laughed from his throne of storm clouds. Give them the drum, he roared. Let them speak with fire in their feet and memory in their hands. And so it was agreed. A voice would be gifted to the people, not a human voice, but one that echoed from the beginning of time. The voice of the drum. But not just any drum. It had to be carved from the sacred wood of the Iroko tree, tall and ancient, home to spirits older than kings. Its skin must come from the eye-marked leopard, one who walked both forest and dream. Its shape must be breathed into by someone who had not yet been born, a soul chosen by the ancestors to arrive when the village was ready. That soul would become known to the world as Aroden, the first master of sound, the first to listen before speaking, and the first to hear the heartbeat of the earth. The village that would one day become Odinoni was a small gathering of huts on the edge of the Oyo Kingdom's outer lands. A place of traders and farmers, hunters and spirit keepers. The people lived simply, guided by the stars and the wisdom of elders who remembered tales whispered by their own grandparents. But even in this cradle of early civilization, something was missing. And then, he was born. Aroden's mother, Ye'anaik, was a weaver of stories and a woman known to dream while wide awake. She bore him under the midday sun, as the village stood still, staring at a sky split in half, one side blazing with light, the other shrouded in dark cloud. This child will speak two truths, the diviner declared, placing a collar knot on Aroden's chest. One for the living, and one for the dead. The boy grew in quiet. He did not cry as other children did. Instead, he listened. To the ground. To the rustle of leaves. To the rhythm of rain. His father, Boba Kolopo, a skilled carver of calabashes and walking staffs, would often find his son staring at wood with wonder, as if it whispered secrets only he could hear. By the time he was 8, Aroden had stopped speaking altogether, not out of fear, but reverence. The tongue is loud, he wrote once in the red earth with a stick, but it forgets. The drum remembers. One night, when the moon was swollen and red, the elders called a meeting beneath the great baobab tree. The land had begun to change. The hunters returned with fewer animals. The river ran dry by noon. And the sky, oh, the sky, cracked with thunder even when there were no clouds. Something was stirring. Something old. It was the spirit walker, Aya Olemu, who said the prophecy aloud. The drum must be made, she whispered. The one that speaks not for war, not for dance, but for remembrance. The villagers murmured, uncertain. They knew of drums. They danced to them during festivals. They heard the talking drums of neighboring clans mimic speech, Bietor to Bieder, the king has arrived. But this was different. Aya Olemu was speaking of a drum that could summon memory itself, that could carry the voice of ancestors, and that could, if needed, awaken gods. Only Aroden, now a boy of 12, stood without fear. "I know where the tree lives," he said. They found the Iroko deep within the Obon forest, where no path had been cut, and no song had been sung for generations. The tree was so tall it scraped the underbelly of the heavens, and its roots curled like sleeping pythons. Eroden approached it alone, barefoot, carrying only a calabash of palm wine and a strand of his own mother's hair. He knelt and began to hum. A low sound. Not melody, not chant, something older. The tree shivered. For 3 days, Eroden fasted beneath its branches, praying not with words but with presence. On the 3rd night, thunder cracked, and a bolt of fire split the Iroko down its middle. The tree did not fall. Instead, it opened, revealing a single.
Eroden stood in the forest clearing with the drum resting between his knees. The morning sun was still shy, peeking gently through the tall Iroko trees above. Everything was quiet, not the kind of quiet that feels empty, but the kind that feels full. Like something big was about to happen. He took a deep breath. His fingers hovered over the stretched skin of the drum, smooth, strong, made from the leopard who had walked in both dream and forest. The cords wrapped around the drum were tight, holding stories Eroden had never spoken, only felt. And then, for the first time, he struck it. Ba. Ta. Ba-ta-bie-ta-ta. The sound rolled through the trees like thunder on tiptoe. The birds stopped singing. The breeze stopped blowing. Even the ants paused in their long lines. In the village of Odinani, pots stopped clinking. Children dropped their sticks. The elders looked up from their mats. "What is that?" whispered a little girl named Ebony. Her grandmother held her hand tightly. "That," she said, her voice trembling, "is the sound of the ancestors coming home." The drum did not speak in words the way mouths do. But it said something everyone could understand. It said, "You are not alone." It said, "Remember the names of your grandmothers and their mothers before them." It said, "This land knows your footsteps." And it said, "Come, come, gather." The people began walking. From every corner of the village, from the yam farms and the riverbanks, they came. Mothers carried babies. Old men leaned on carved canes. Children skipped barefoot over tree roots. Even those who were sick sat up in their mats. No one wanted to miss what was calling them. They found Eroden still playing. Not with wildness. With care. With love. Each beat was like a story being told without words, a prayer of wood and skin. The chief of the village, Baba Adarimi, stood watching. He had led the people for many years and had seen many things. But never this. "Eroden," he said gently, "where did you learn this?" Eroden looked up. His eyes were full of something too big to name, like stars, or oceans, or memory itself. "I didn't learn it," he said. "I just listened." That night, the elders built a great fire. They sat in a wide circle, and Eroden placed the drum in the center, wrapped in a cloth made of white and indigo. It glowed in the firelight like it was alive. Aya Alamu, the village spirit walker, stood up. She wore beads around her neck and a wrapper with tiny symbols stitched into the fabric, each one a prayer. This drum, she said, her voice strong, is not just for dancing. It is not for war. It is not for show. The people leaned in. This drum is for remembrance. It is the voice of our ancestors. It is the echo of our future. It is the thread between who we were and who we are still becoming. She turned to Aroden. You were chosen to bring it to us. But we must all become its keepers. And from that day on, the drum had a name. It was called Ayan Lomo, which means the one who remembers through rhythm. Now, children, let me tell you something very special. Ayan Lomo was no ordinary drum. It could do something no other drum had ever done before. If someone had done something wrong and was too afraid to speak, the drum could help them find the courage to tell the truth. If a grandmother forgot the stories of her youth, the drum could help her remember. If a child had lost a parent and didn't know how to cry, the drum could carry their sadness until they were ready. And sometimes, late at night, when the moon was full, the drum would play by itself. Just a soft rhythm in the distance, like a heartbeat. Ba, ta, ba, ta. And the people would know. The ancestors were near. But not everyone was happy. There were some, far from Odinani, who believed only books should carry history. Who feared the old ways. Who thought memory should come only from paper, not from drums or dreams. They would come. But not yet. For now, the people of Odinani were joyful. They sang new songs. They planted trees in honor of the drum. They gave thanks to the gods and poured libations for their ancestors. And they promised to never forget. But I must tell you this. The drum gave a warning on the night of its first full moon. Aroden sat beside it alone. He had been playing a soft lullaby when the drum vibrated beneath his hands, not from his touch, but from within. And in the voice of a whisper that wasn't a whisper, he heard, "When the drum is silent, the people will forget. When it speaks again, they shall remember who they are." Aroden bowed his head. He didn't fully understand what the drum meant. But he knew one thing. As long as he lived, the drum would never be silent. Still, he wondered. Would the people always listen? Would the next generation guard the rhythm as he had? And what would happen if one day, the drum fell silent, not from his hands, but from the hearts of those who forgot how to hear? What if someone tried to silence it? What if someone succeeded? But those, my child, are questions for another day. For now, the drum still speaks. But for how long? To be continued.